Her phone vibrated violently at 3:07 a.m., the sound cutting through the silence like a scream. Emily whispered, "Please, not tonight," but her trembling hands still reached for the glowing screen. It wasn't his name. It was a message that read, "We need to talk." Her heart thundered in her chest as tears blurred her vision, the words striking harder than any argument they had ever had. Emily said, "Daniel, why now? Why at this hour?" She replayed his voice in her mind, warm and deep, the voice that once promised, "I can't lose you." Yet now, those promises felt like ghosts clawing at her fragile hope. She sat in the dark, the streetlight outside flickering through the curtains, painting shadows that seemed to close in around her. She wanted to scream, but her voice broke into silence. Emily said, "This can't be happening." 1,000 nights of waiting, of whispered goodnights across time zones, came crashing down into one line of text. The ache was unbearable, but she still clung to the phone, as though it were his hand. Emily sat frozen, her breaths uneven, as the silence in the room pressed harder than the words on the screen. She whispered, "Daniel, I thought we were unbreakable." Every memory of laughter and late-night promises now clashed against the cruelty of a single message. She remembered the way Daniel used to say, "I can't lose you," and how those words had once been her anchor in endless nights of longing. But now, she questioned if those words were ever real. Her heart raced, torn between hope and fear, as if the distance between them had finally won. Her thumb hovered over the call button, trembling. She whispered, "If I call, will he answer? Or will silence finish what distance already started?" She remembered birthdays missed, moments unshared, all forgiven for love. But tonight, forgiveness felt like weakness. Every second stretched, her courage flickering like the streetlight outside. Emily whispered, "What if he's already chosen someone else?" The thought stabbed her deeper than silence ever could. She saw flashes in her mind, Daniel laughing with someone closer, someone who didn't have to count miles. She shook her head violently, trying to push it away, but jealousy wrapped around her chest like chains. Emily said, "I gave everything, Daniel." Her voice cracked in the dark. She thought of nights spent waiting on his calls, of rearranging her world for his time zone, of holding on to promises that now felt like lies. She pressed the phone to her chest again, begging the silence to break. But all she heard was her own heartbeat, loud and desperate, echoing in the emptiness. Morning light crept through the blinds, but Emily's eyes were swollen from the night before. She whispered, "I stayed awake because I believed in us, Daniel." Her phone lay silent on the table, mocking her faith. She thought back to endless nights where she had waited, heart pounding, just to hear his voice across oceans. Friends had warned her, her sister had pleaded, but Emily insisted distance could not destroy love. She had built her world around his time zone, shifting her sleep, skipping parties, and saying no to every chance that didn't align with him. Emily said, "I gave you the best years of my youth, while you gave me only fragments of yourself." She held on to every text like it was scripture, every call like it was air. Her chest ached with longing as she remembered promises that once kept her alive. Emily sat at the kitchen table, untouched coffee cooling beside her. She remembered when Daniel's calls had been her lifeline, the reason she smiled at empty walls. She whispered, "I waited every night, even when my body begged me to sleep." Her parents frowned at her fading energy. Her friends teased her for living inside her phone. Yet Emily defended him, saying, "Love is worth the wait." Every sacrifice felt noble when she believed his devotion matched hers. But doubt clawed now, tearing at her faith. She said, "Did you ever lose sleep for me, Daniel? Or was it always just me?" The thought carved her deeper than silence ever could. Her sister Claire leaned against the doorway, watching her. "Claire," said Emily, "you're losing yourself." Emily shook her head stubbornly, voice fragile but firm. "You don't understand. He loves me." Claire's eyes softened with worry, but her words cut sharp. "If love drains you, is it love?" Emily clenched her fists, defensive, refusing to let her anchor slip. She whispered to herself, Daniel said he'd fight for us. Yet the weight of her sister's gaze pressed truth into her chest. She wondered if she was clinging to a ghost, and that thought terrified her more than heartbreak. Emily walked to the window, staring out at the gray sky. She remembered all the nights she had stood there, whispering into her phone, as if he could hear her across the miles. She said softly, "I believed our love was stronger than the distance." Her reflection stared back, tired, hollow-eyed, but still hopeful. She pressed her forehead against the glass, heart aching. She whispered, "Daniel, why isn't love enough?" The silence pressed harder than words, but she held on to the memory of his voice, clinging to it like a lifeline. That night, Emily sat curled in her blanket, the glow of old chat logs lighting her face. She scrolled through "I miss you" messages, through digital love letters that once healed her. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Was it ever real, Daniel?" She clutched the phone against her chest, remembering the way his laugh had made the world lighter, even through static. She wanted to believe in that boy again, the one who had promised forever under the stars. But the screen burned cold, each word now a reminder of distance, not devotion. Emily stared at her phone, the call log showing 5 unanswered attempts. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Daniel, why won't you pick up?" The ticking of the clock grew unbearable, every second hammering her chest. She remembered when he used to answer instantly, his voice soft even through static, saying, "I'll never let you feel alone." But now the silence screamed louder than words ever could. She said, "Are you too busy, or am I no longer worth your time?" Her heart pounded as if it already knew the answer. She clutched her phone tighter, replaying the echoes of his old promises, but they felt thin, fragile, almost mocking. The space between them was no longer miles, it was walls she could not break. The following evening, Emily scrolled through Daniel's social media. Her chest tightened, seeing a photo of him laughing with a woman she didn't know. She whispered, "Who is she, Daniel?" Jealousy twisted inside her, sharp and suffocating. Her mind spun. Was this the reason for his silence? She remembered his promise, "You're the only one I need." Yet the image felt like betrayal carved in pixels. She pressed her phone against her lips, heart pounding with fear. She said, "Tell me she's just a friend, tell me I'm not losing you." But no explanation came. Just the haunting stillness of distance, heavier than any truth. Emily's best friend, Mark, leaned across the cafe table, his voice steady but concerned. "Mark," said Emily, "you're breaking apart." She forced a smile, insisting, "He loves me, he's just busy." Mark shook his head, eyes full of truth she didn't want to face. "Busy people still find a way to care," he said softly. Emily's chest tightened as his words pierced her defenses. She wanted to defend Daniel, but deep down, the cracks were widening too fast to ignore. She whispered, "If I admit you're right, it means I've wasted everything." Mark reached out, his hand steady on hers, silently telling her she deserved more than silence. Late at night, Emily lay awake, phone on her chest, her thoughts restless. She whispered, "I can't keep living in this silence." She remembered Daniel's laughter, how it once healed her, but now the absence of it felt like torture. She turned over, clutching the pillow, wishing it were him. Every unanswered call felt like rejection. Every hour without a text felt like abandonment. She whispered again, "Daniel, are you slipping away on purpose?" The ache grew unbearable, like her heart was unraveling, one fragile thread at a time. The storm broke during a late-night call that finally connected. Daniel's voice was cold, distant. Daniel said, "I've been busy, Emily, stop overthinking." Her breath caught, tears stinging as she replied, "Busy doesn't mean disappearing." He sighed, frustration sharp, "You don't trust me." Emily whispered, "I trusted you with everything, but you're slipping away." Silence stretched, heavier than shouting. Her chest burned as if each second was tearing them apart. It was no longer about time zones. It was about choices, and Daniel wasn't choosing her anymore. Emily's phone buzzed with a notification she hadn't expected. A tagged post on Daniel's profile. Her heart froze as she opened it, seeing him with the same woman from before, arms wrapped around her. The caption read, "Couldn't imagine life without you." Her breath shattered. She whispered, "Daniel, what is this?" Memories of their late-night promises collided violently with the image on her screen. She said, "You told me I was your only one." The betrayal tasted metallic, sharp as blood in her mouth. She dropped the phone, clutching her chest, gasping for air. For the first time, the distance didn't feel like miles. It felt like a wall built by his lies. Emily slammed the phone down on her desk, rage flooding through her veins. She whispered, "After everything, Daniel." Her voice cracked as she tried to hold herself together. She remembered every sacrifice she had made, the sleepless nights, the endless waiting, the silence she endured, all for love that was shared with someone else. She said, "You didn't just lie, you stole years I can't get back." Her reflection in the darkened laptop screen looked like a stranger, hollow eyes, broken trust, and a fire she had never felt before. The next morning, Claire stormed into her room, holding the same post on her phone. Claire said, "Emily, you need to see this clearly." Emily shook her head, voice trembling. "He said he couldn't lose me." Claire's voice broke with anger. "He already did, the moment he chose her." Emily collapsed onto the bed, sobbing into her hands. She whispered, "I was never enough." Claire knelt beside her, gripping her shoulders tightly, saying, "No, Emily, he was never enough for you." The truth pierced, both painful and liberating. Emily scrolled through old messages, searching desperately for proof that Daniel's words had once been real. She read his late-night texts, "I can't wait to hold you," now tainted by betrayal. She whispered, "Were you writing those words while holding her?" Her stomach churned, each memory poison. Yet, even in her devastation, she clung to the hope that maybe he had loved her once. She said, "Tell me it wasn't all a lie, Daniel." The screen burned bright, but the silence screamed louder than any truth he could offer. That night, unable to bear the silence, Emily finally called. Her hands shook as the line rang before clicking open. Daniel's voice was calm, almost detached. "Daniel, 26, said Emily. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." Her heart fractured as she whispered, "So it's true." He exhaled, tired. "I didn't mean to hurt you, but I couldn't keep pretending." Tears spilled as Emily gasped, "Pretending? You built my whole world on lies." His silence was heavier than confession. In that moment, Emily realized the love she had fought for had already died long before she found proof. Emily's voice shook as she confronted him over video call. She said, "How could you build my world on lies, Daniel?" His jaw tightened, eyes avoiding hers. Daniel, 26, replied coldly, "I didn't plan this, Emily. It just happened." Her tears burned as she slammed her fist on the desk, shouting, "You told me I was your forever." His silence was heavier than excuses, and she realized this was the moment where everything shattered. She whispered, "You broke me, and you don't even care." He finally looked at her, face distant, as if love had drained out of him long ago. Emily shouted, "I gave you everything. My nights, my heart, my future." Her voice cracked, echoing through the empty room. Daniel rubbed his temples, exhaling sharply. "I never asked for this much." The words cut like knives. Emily gasped, "You never asked. But I gave because I loved you." He looked at her through the screen, frustration clouding his face. He said, "Love shouldn't feel like a prison." Emily's sob broke into silence as her world collapsed. She whispered, "It wasn't a prison, it was devotion. But you treated it like chains." Silence stretched between them, broken only by Emily's ragged breaths. She whispered, "Did you ever love me, Daniel?" He hesitated, his face flickering with guilt before hardening. Daniel said, "I thought I did, but maybe I loved the idea of you more than the reality." Her chest caved as if his words had ripped the air out of her lungs. She pressed her hand to her mouth, sobbing. "I was real. Every tear, every sacrifice was real." Daniel's expression stayed guarded, detached. For Emily, the truth was worse than lies. She had been nothing more than a placeholder in his lonely nights. Emily slammed the laptop shut, the sound echoing like a final door closing. She collapsed onto the floor, whispering, "I wasn't enough." Her sobs filled the silence, but beneath the pain, a spark of anger began to burn. She replayed his words, "Love shouldn't feel like a prison," twisting in her chest. She said aloud, "Then why did you chain me to your lies?" Her body shook, torn between grief and fury. She curled into herself, whispering Daniel's name like a prayer she no longer believed in. For the first time, she felt the beginning of something she hadn't before: release. Emily's phone buzzed with one last message from Daniel. "I'm sorry, but I can't be who you need." Her hands shook as she read it, every letter slicing through her. She whispered, "You didn't even fight for me." Tears blurred her vision, but anger surged stronger than despair. She stood slowly, her breath unsteady. She said aloud, "If you can let me go this easily, then you never deserved me." Her chest heaved with both pain and defiance. In that moment, Emily realized the fight was over, not because she let go, but because he already had. The morning sun crept into Emily's room, soft light brushing the walls like a hesitant hand. She sat at the edge of her bed, the phone resting silent in her palms, its cold screen reflecting her swollen eyes. The final words Daniel had written echoed in her chest, "I can't be who you need." They pressed against her ribs like heavy stone, dragging her lungs down with every breath. She whispered, "You let me go so easily, Daniel." For a moment, she almost wished the phone would buzz again, even if only to hear another lie, another excuse, something to tether her heart. But the silence spoke louder, reminding her that love had become a one-sided battlefield. Emily closed her eyes, inhaling slowly, the air sharp but cleansing. She whispered again, softer this time, "Maybe it's time I learned to breathe without you." Tears slid down, but they were fewer, gentler, no longer floods that drowned her. She felt both broken and strangely lighter, as if the storm inside her had passed, leaving only stillness behind. Emily sat at the kitchen table, steam rising slowly from her untouched cup of coffee. The quiet hum of the fridge filled the silence until Claire walked in, eyes filled with worry. Claire slid into the seat across from her, studying her little sister with the kind of tenderness only born from shared pain. "You don't need him to breathe, Emily," Claire said, her voice firm but not unkind. Emily's lips trembled, and she lowered her gaze to the cup. "What? But I don't know who I am without him," she whispered, the admission raw, honest. Claire reached across the table, wrapping her hand around Emily's. Her warmth grounded Emily in a way she hadn't felt in months. "You are enough, with or without him," Claire said, squeezing gently. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but they were different this time, less heavy, less suffocating. She whispered, "Then maybe I'll start learning who I am again." For the first time since the storm, her words didn't feel like lies. They felt like the faintest flicker of truth. Later that day, Emily wandered through the park, autumn leaves scattering across the path with each step. Children's laughter echoed nearby, and couples strolled hand in hand, each gesture stabbing softly at her wounds. Yet amid the ache, she whispered to herself, "I'm still here." Her steps were slow, unsteady, but they were hers, each one carrying her further away from the shadow of Daniel. She paused by the pond, staring down at her reflection, rippling in the cool water. For the first time, she didn't see the girl who lived inside waiting. She saw a woman scarred but standing. She closed her eyes, inhaling the crisp air, and whispered, "I'll find myself again." The words floated into the wind, caught by branches and carried beyond her reach, but she didn't chase them. For once, she allowed them to drift freely, knowing they no longer needed to cling desperately to her chest. That evening, Emily curled on the couch, the glow of her phone lighting her face. She scrolled through old photos, selfies full of laughter, screenshots of midnight calls, words that once felt like promises. Her thumb hovered above the delete button, her breath caught in her throat. "If I erase this, does it mean he never mattered?" she whispered. The question burned, because memories had once been her lifeline. Yet holding on to them now was like clutching thorns, each one tearing deeper into her skin. With trembling fingers, she pressed delete. The first photo vanished, and her chest loosened just slightly. Another photo gone, and another, until her tears blurred the screen. "You mattered once," she whispered, "but you don't define me anymore." She set the phone down beside her, breathing out a shaky sigh. For the first time, her silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like freedom beginning to stretch its wings. At midnight, Emily stood by her window, city lights twinkling faintly in the distance. She pressed her hand against the cool glass, the reflection of her tear-stained face staring back. She whispered, "Goodbye, Daniel." The words no longer carried desperation, only release. For years, she had been the girl who clung to his voice, who measured her worth in his messages, who begged the silence to break. But tonight, she was simply Emily, no longer defined by distance, no longer tethered to a man who had chosen to let her go. Her chest still ached, but her whisper came steadier. "I survived you." The room felt strangely lighter, as if the chains had loosened. She allowed one last tear to fall, not as surrender, but as closure. The silence, once her enemy, now felt like a companion. She turned from the window, knowing the scar would remain, but it belonged to her alone now. Emily sat on the balcony, night air brushing against her skin like a whisper of freedom. Below her, the city pulsed with life, but in her chest, there was a strange, soothing quiet. She whispered, "Funny how silence used to terrify me, but now it feels like peace." She remembered Daniel's voice, the way he once swore, "I can't lose you," yet he had let her slip like sand through his fingers. She whispered again, "You didn't lose me, Daniel, you gave me away." Her words carried no bitterness, only truth. She tilted her head back, closing her eyes as the cool wind kissed her cheeks. For the first time, she let the memory of him drift without reaching for it, like smoke disappearing into night. Claire entered Emily's room, finding her holding an empty photo frame. The picture that once held Daniel's smile was gone. Claire knelt beside her, her voice gentle but firm. "You're stronger without him." Emily's lips quivered, whispering, "Stronger doesn't mean unbroken." Claire wrapped her arms tightly around her sister, pulling her into warmth. "Healing doesn't mean forgetting," Claire said softly. "It means carrying the pain without letting it define you." Emily leaned into her embrace, whispering through tears, "I'll carry him for now, but not forever." The weight of those words settled heavy and freeing all at once. It didn't mean the ache vanished, but it meant she finally believed she could survive it. Days later, Emily stepped into the cafe where Mark had once spoken the truths she wasn't ready to hear. Mark looked up from his table, offering a small smile that held both concern and relief. Emily slid into the seat across from him, clutching her coffee cup. She whispered, "I'm trying to breathe again." Mark's eyes softened as he nodded, replying gently, "One breath at a time is enough." Emily lifted the cup, the warmth grounding her, steadying the ache inside. For the first time in months, she didn't check her phone. She didn't wait for a message that would never come. She sat in silence, sipping slowly, whispering to herself, "I'm still here, and that's enough." It wasn't joy, not yet, but it was survival. And survival, she realized, was its own kind of quiet victory. That night, Emily opened her leather-bound journal, its pages untouched for months. She picked up her pen, hand trembling but determined. Slowly she wrote, "He loved me once, or maybe he didn't. But I loved, and that is enough." Her tears blurred the ink, but she didn't stop. Closing the book gently, she pressed her palm against its cover, sealing her words like a quiet goodbye. She whispered, "My story doesn't end with him." For the first time, the sentence didn't sound like denial, it sounded like truth. She looked around the quiet room, once a cage of silence, now a place of fragile freedom. The quiet no longer punished her. Tonight, it felt like her companion. Weeks later, Emily stood at the train station, watching families reunite with warm embraces, friends laughing as they spilled into each other's arms. She whispered, "Once, I waited here for a love that never came." Her chest tightened, but this time the ache didn't drag her down, it steadied her. She tucked her phone deep into her pocket, no longer searching for its glow. She whispered, "He'll never call again." And that's the point. A tear slid slowly down her cheek, but her lips curved into the faintest bittersweet smile. The final blow wasn't Daniel's silence. It was her choice to never wait for it again. The scar would remain, but it was hers now, a mark of survival.